Hey students, it is time for another book talk for this week. I'm going to be doing a book talk on a book that I have a physical copy of, but as with the previous ones, this book is also available on the library ebook site, and the directions for accessing that are linked in the directions for your independent reading assignment for this week. Book talk that I'm going to be doing today is on the book Sunrise Over Fallujah by author Walter Dean Myers. So I have done book talks on several books by Walter Dean Myers. One of the last book talks that I did before we went out of school was on Walter Dean Myers' book called Monster. And to recap that was about the young African-American boy who was accused of being involved in a murder, and he writes the story of his trial almost as the screenplay of a movie because he's really into videography. And so as you're reading the story, you're trying to put together the pieces of the trial, listen to the evidence, and figure out if he actually did what he was accused of. Walter Dean Myers also wrote a book called Fallen Angels. I don't know if you remember, but I did a book talk on that book way in the beginning of the year. So Fallen Angels is a book about the Vietnam War. And it's written from the perspective of a soldier who is deployed to Vietnam. And I think it really gives you a good perspective of what day-to-day life of a soldier who had to go fight in Vietnam would have been like. There are some battle scenes, but there are also a lot of scenes of just the guys hanging around camp, talking about their lives and their dreams and their hopes and their plans. So it's kind of like day in the life of a Vietnam soldier, and you get to see how their emotions and their reactions to everything that's going on are processed. So if you haven't read that book, I would recommend that you read that book first, because this book is kind of a sequel to that book, but you can also just read this book as a standalone book. So this book is about the Iraq War. So it takes place several decades after the Vietnam War, and the main character in this book is the nephew of the main character of the Fallen Angels, the Vietnam War book. And so partially this book is written as just his thoughts and reactions to what's going on in the Iraq War, but then also some of it is written as letters from the nephew to his uncle, and then also some letters from his parents to him and from his uncle to him. So I'm going to be reading a couple of those letters to you. I am going to start off with the first letter. And this is the beginning of the book. This is the first part of his first letter to his uncle. February 27th, 2003. Dear Uncle Richie, when I was home on leave, I reread the letters you sent from Vietnam to my father. In one of them, you said that you were always a little nervous once you arrived in country. We're not in Iraq yet, but that's the way I feel, kind of jumpy. At one of our orientations, and we have at least 2 a week, an officer said the guys who fought in Nam wouldn't even recognize today's army. We're supposed to be so cool and well-trained and everything. I hope that's so. I was thinking that maybe your eyes wouldn't recognize today's army, but I bet your stomach would. I can't tell you where we are right now, but it's less than 100 miles from the Iraq border. What our army should do is take photographs of all the military stuff we have over here and then send copies to the Iraqis. That would end things right then and there. I really think the Iraqis will back down at the last minute and hand over their weapons, and we'll just have to put in a handful of military police to take care of business while the political people do their thing. I don't expect anybody to be shooting at us. And for those of you who know anything about the Iraq War, that is not exactly how things went down. So as the book continues, you get to see from his perspective and how his perspective changes a little bit as he starts to process what's actually happening. I'm going to read to you a little bit later from the book. This is about a month later, March 25th, 2003. Dear Uncle Richie, I'm writing this letter, but I probably won't mail it. I probably won't save it either. Today, I saw a stranger die. I saw what the M16s could do. I don't know why the kids started to run. Maybe he was afraid, but what happened was that he was killed, and we left him lying on the ground. At first, I was really sad, depressed. Then I felt myself trying to shut it out. I started by telling myself that he was probably one of the guys who wanted to kill Americans, but that was a dead-end street. It just didn't work. What works is to put it outside of you, to let it not be a part of who you are. I know I won't ever be able to talk about it. I wonder if that's the reason you never talked about anything that happened in Vietnam. On the way back to our base, I saw that Jonesy's hand was shaking. Nothing else, just his hand. I thought about putting my hand on his, but I didn't. None of us in the first squad talked about what had happened. So if you want to hear about an important part of history and what life would have been like for a soldier in the Iraq War, then check this book out. And in any case, I hope that you guys have a great week.